You were just too in awe to clap for a while, weren't you? Can we just keep doing that? Because I feel like this is going to be a downer after that. So visually and symbolically, the Christmas season, it's all about lights, is it not? It's what we see. This year, my wife, she went out and got one of those multicolored strobe lights that you sort of plant down in front of your house, and it shines on the facade of the house, and you get all these swirly colors going around, and it's really nice. And of course, our Christmas tree is lit up like a big city, right? That's the way it looks all over the place. So thank God for Thomas Edison. Thank God for Thomas Edison, because of Edison and his fellow scientists, we don't have to worry about those dangerous candles in Christmas trees any longer, because it's really not a cool thing to do to burn your house down during the holidays. So thank God for Thomas Edison. That's why I was telling people, be careful with the candles right here. Also, with the creation of light bulbs, we would not have hundreds of jokes to tell, such as, I saw the groans out there already. How many Christians does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is 3, although they're really just 1. A little Trinitarian humor for Christmas Eve. Speaking of the Trinity, without the birth of the second person of the Trinity, there would be no Trinity. And wouldn't our monotheism, or our belief in one God, be rather boring without the doctrine of the Trinity for us to quibble about, unending, right? That's all we talk about sometimes. But let's get back to this light thing, which really is the most ubiquitous thing in our world. Lights everywhere. From outer space, if you were to look down, North America and many other parts of the world always look like a lit up Christmas tree. But now in the ancient world, light was a rare and precious commodity, especially after the sun went down. And this may be why the world's great religions, all of which began in a pre-light bulb era, characterize light in such sacred terms. Excuse me. I'll get to the sacredness of light in just a minute. But first, think about the many ways that light, both visually and symbolically, is so common in our lives. And I'm going to give you just 3 examples, but out of millions of possibilities, of course. Here's some examples of light as part of our culture. Recently, we lost the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, and one of Bush's more memorable comments was coined during his 1988 presidential bid to highlight the importance of community involvement. He referred to what people do all over the country every day. You remember this? As 1,000 points of light. So in that sense, light refers to all that people do, all the good that people do in every community across this nation. Another example, Motel 6. Motel 6 tapped into the importance of the light metaphor in 1986 when they hired an American author, voice actor, and radio host, Tom Bodett, to be their spokesperson. And you remember how he ends all of his commercials with this phrase, "I'm Tom Bodett from Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you." Well, here Bodett is using light as a metaphor for hospitality. Now, of course, every light will eventually go out, even the light from the sun. So who can forget Willie Nelson's old song, "The Party's Over," which includes the line, "Turn out the lights, the party's over." In one of his earlier gigs I read, Nelson was with a band called the Esquire Ballroom Band, and he was allowed to conclude every gig with this song. So those are the last words that people heard when that band was playing. Turn out the lights, the party's over. Later, that phrase was popularized by the former Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Don Meredith. You may remember the days when he would be one of the hosts for Monday Night Football. And after a key play would occur that would effectively end all the hope for the opposing team, and there's no way they could win the game, Meredith almost always would sing, "Turn out the lights, the party's over." So here, light symbolized hope, and in this case, hopes that were extinguished. By the way, I dare you to find someone or anyone else who, in the first few minutes of a sermon, is able to throw in references to Thomas Edison, George H.W. Bush, Tom Bodett, Willie Nelson, Don Meredith, and a light bulb joke to boot. And that's the kind of bang for your buck that you'll get here at Immanuel United Church of Christ. Okay, back to my point. Light is everywhere, both physically and symbolically. It is a multi-purpose word and image. And this is especially true in a religious context. Light is symbolically important for Christianity and for virtually all of the major world religions. They all claim to be the light of the world, so to speak. For example, in the world's oldest religion, Hinduism, light is a symbol for their understanding of God they call Brahman, who is the eternal one. Light symbolizes Brahman. In its offspring religion, Buddhism, the Buddha is known as the awakened or enlightened one, which was never meant to be unique for him, because the Buddha's last words were, "Be your own light." In Judaism, "Let there be light" is the primary utterance of creation, separating darkness from light. And I'll get to Christianity in a moment. But light isn't an important symbol just for the realm of the sacred. It is also important in the secular realm. The aptly named Enlightenment and the beginning of the scientific revolution was an intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated Europe during the 18th century. It included a range of ideas that was centered on reason as the primary source of authority and legitimacy, and they meant that in contrast to faith and religion. And the Enlightenment came to advance ideals such as liberty, progress, tolerance, fraternity, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. All very good ideas, which brings us full circle back to the light bulb. We've all read or we've watched cartoons depicting a light bulb coming on over an individual's head, meaning that the individual has a good idea, right? Now, where did this idea come from to use a light bulb to denote a good idea? It came from Felix the cat. I'm sure a couple of you knew that. Felix the cat. How many of you watched Felix the cat growing up? Don't give your age away. You can't do that. Felix the cat, created more than a decade before Mickey Mouse, Felix was the most popular cartoon character of the silent film era. You may remember when Felix was thinking, symbols and letters would sometimes appear over his head, and it was in these symbolic images that we first see the light bulb used to represent a new idea. When I reflect on the birth of Jesus, I sometimes think that, hey, that was really a good idea. I get this image in my head of God with a light bulb shining over the Godhead. Now, here's why I think that Jesus was such a good idea. Jesus was born in a world where darkness, both physically and symbolically, was more prevalent than light. But there was always hope that someone would come along and bring more light to the world. Now, our ancestors in our tradition, in our faith tradition, Judaism, personified this light of hope in a human being they refer to as a Messiah. A Messiah also means Christ or anointed one. The prophet Isaiah, he described this particular hope by saying this: "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined." Now, in the context in which this was written, Isaiah is looking ahead to a time when the darkness of Assyrian dominance and destruction will end. And so he's hoping for a new Messiah king who will restore the honor and the fame and the authority of David's royal throne. A few centuries later, the light bulb came on over the heads of Jesus' followers. They had a really great idea. When they read from the prophets, especially the book of Isaiah, they couldn't help but see references to the man they had come to know and love, Jesus of Nazareth. "For a child," they read, "has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." So the birth of Jesus, that was a really great idea. I mean, if you wanted to express to people who lived in misery and poverty, oppression, and constant darkness that you love them and you want to connect with them, then the incarnation, the embodiment of God in a newborn baby would certainly get people's attention. And so would having this baby born in a manger in a dirty barn and having the news of his birth first delivered to the shepherds who were out working in the field with their flocks. And if you wanted to connect with a specific people, namely the Jewish people, descendants of the children of Israel, then bringing Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem, the birthplace of King David, for a census, and having the baby born there was also a terrific idea, because this baby became the light of God. If Jesus were born today, we might call him God's little light bulb, the one who brings light to the darkest corners of our lives. Or maybe we would call him God's flashlight, the one who looks for us in the darkness. Whatever image or symbol we would use for him, I think we can all agree that one day, a couple of thousand years ago, give or take a few years, the light bulb came on in God's mind. Jesus, the babe in a manger, was a really great idea. So, until I see you again, just know this. I'm Jimmy Watson for Immanuel United Church of Christ, and we'll leave the light on for you. Amen.